Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to get into some pretty dense source material and hopefully pull out the insights that really stick with you.
And today we are going way back. We're looking at a specific moment in time.
Yeah, Lord's Day morning, October 10th, 1875.
And this is the whole context for a really powerful 19th century sermon. It was delivered right in a moment of, well, profound shock.
Right, the preacher is basically getting ready to speak, and this messenger arrives.
With just devastating news.
The news was that a man named Henry Olney, an honored elder, had died. And what's so shocking about it, and really the reason we're doing this deep dive, is just how sudden it was.
Completely out of the blue.
He was, by all accounts, in perfect health. The sources say he was at his business that morning, then around noon he feels this sharp, rheumatic pain.
He sees a doctor, lies down, and then it's over. With a gasp or two, he expired. Just like that.
A death with absolutely no warning.
And that suddenness creates this perfect philosophical tension. Because everyone in that congregation, they would have assumed that if anyone was going to pass, it would be his brother.
William Olney.
Yes, William, who had been sick for a long, long time. But the source makes this incredible point. The strong and stalwart brother who ailed nothing is the one who's taken.
While the one who was chronically ill is spared.
Exactly. And that reversal, that's what leads us straight to the core question of this whole analysis, which comes right out of the book of Job.
Is there not an appointed time to man upon earth?
That's the one.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack this argument that there's a divine appointment ruling everything. The sermon says we're not just living men, we are dying men.
And we exist within this fixed, ordered plan. It's not just about how long you live. It covers your struggles, your warfare, and your work, your service.
It's all about finding this deep order in what, from our point of view, just looks like, well, chaos.
Complete chaos. I mean, when we look at history or even just our daily lives, it can feel like a tangled skein, right? A massive, confusing knot of chance and accidents.
It really can. So how does the sermon manage that pivot? How do you go from the raw, immediate grief over Henry Olney's death to this huge cosmic idea of divine order?
Well, it insists on a total change in perspective. It says, to God who sees the end from the beginning, everything is in due course and order.
He's described as the Dictator of Destinies.
A powerful phrase. He guides everything from a speck of dust to a comet. And that absolute governance, it applies first and foremost to the time of our life.
Which is fixed at 3 points.
3 distinct points: commencement, continuance, and conclusion.
Okay, so let's start with commencement. The idea that nobody is the offspring of chance.
Right. It means the very start of your life is appointed, and that guides everything else. The source really asks the listener to think about what it meant to be born in the 19th century.
A day of grace, they call it.
Yes. Instead of being born in an era where, and this is their phrase, your naked forefathers sacrificed to idols.
That's a fascinating way to frame it. They see the very timing of their birth as this massive spiritual advantage.
A huge one. They're contrasting their time with what they saw as the superstition of the past. The source uses this really striking phrase.
The cast clout or rotten rag.
That's it. Worshipping a cast clout or rotten rag. They meant, saints' relics or other objects. They felt that even just being put to sleep with holy hymns instead of old folk tales completely shaped your destiny.
So where and when you're born, it's not an accident. It's part of the plan.
The meticulous plan.
Okay, so that's the start. What about the continuance? This idea that the time between the cradle and the grave is measured out perfectly.
By the eternal calculator, yeah. Not a single day longer or shorter than what's decreed.
And this is meant to be a comfort.
A deep comfort. Especially for anyone who is suffering. The idea is if the Lord appoints the exact length and the nature of your trial, your sickness, your poverty, then he's not some hard taskmaster who's just going to grind you down endlessly.
But hold on a second. If the end is fixed, how, when, and where you die, doesn't that kind of remove the incentive to, be careful? Why wear a seatbelt if the conclusion is already set?
That is the exact tension, the exact question that the source gets to later on. It's a huge point.
Yeah.
But for now, at this stage of the argument, the focus is all internal.
It's about patience, not passivity.
Exactly. It's meant to instill patience. The source uses this beautiful, if painful, metaphor of suffering producing sweet music.
Even though the strings have to be painfully tightened.
Right. You endure it because you trust that there's a loving purpose behind that appointed suffering.
Which brings us to the conclusion. Death is certain. There's no discharge in this war, as they say, and it's absolutely fixed. That's a tough idea for us to swallow today when we're so focused on extending life.
It is tough, but the source argues the payoff is this steel medicine of courage. It strengthens the mind, it removes fear.
There's that great quote, "Plagues and deaths around me fly, till he please I cannot die."
That's the heart of it. So if your duty calls you to do something dangerous, like say, nurse the sick who are laid low with foul disease, you don't shrink back.
Because you know your death is determined by God's will, not by some random juror.
You're immortal till your work is done. It's an incredibly powerful way to think about risk. It shifts your entire focus from trying to avoid death to making sure you complete your mission.
Okay, so appointment governs our time, but the sources say it also dictates how we spend that time. And that brings us to this next big idea, life as an appointed warfare.
Right, a long, hard struggle that doesn't end until you hear the words, "Thy warfare is accomplished."
The metaphor shifts entirely to a military campaign.
Completely. And if you're a soldier, you're under law to Christ. This means you surrender your own will. And, crucially, you have to accept your fixed rank.
The sermon warns people not to work from his place. What does that mean exactly?
It means don't abandon your post. Don't neglect your specific appointed role, whether you're a father, a servant, a teacher, whatever it is. Your battlefield is right where you're placed.
And soldiers, well, they shouldn't expect luxury.
Not at all. To expect comfort and ease when life has been appointed as a campaign with forced marches and scant food, the source says that's just foolishness.
You have to expect a contest, a fight against sin and trouble. The real hero is the one who's scarred and gashed.
Maimed and wounded, yes. And this struggle, the source argues, was especially intense in that peculiarly dangerous age.
Because they were facing this dual threat.
Superstition on one hand and skepticism on the other.
You know, that feels surprisingly modern. We're still dealing with those two extremes, aren't we? A rise in irrationality alongside a really aggressive kind of skepticism. It makes the battle feel constant.
It does. But here's the comfort in the metaphor. You don't fight alone. This is God's appointed warfare. You don't have to make your own armor or forge your own sword.
Or even manage your own supplies.
Right. Your great captain handles the commissariat.
The logistics of the army, that's a really powerful analogy. And they use Alexander the Great to illustrate it.
It's a fantastic image.
Yeah.
Alexander is marching with his soldiers against the Persians. He's enduring the same heat, the same thirst. After a brutal march, he's offered the very first cup of water.
And he refuses it.
She says, "No, give it to the sick soldiers. I won't drink until every man has had a draft." The point the sermon makes is that Christ has done infinitely more. He's borne the worst of the campaign, so we can trust him to manage our supplies.
So after warfare, the last aspect of this appointment is service. The source calls our days as the days of an hireling. That's an old term. Can you break that down?
A hireling, yeah. It's basically a hireling or an apprentice, someone who's bound to service for a fixed amount of time.
Under solemn indentures.
Exactly. And the source makes the point that even the most powerful people, prime ministers, despots, they're actually the most bound and the most laborious of all servants.
So if you're serving Jesus, the yoke is easy, but it's still a yoke.
It is still a set time of labor and apprenticeship. You are bound to the master until your term is up.
And the commitment required here is total. Absolutely total.
That's the crucial detail. It says, if you're truly God's people, you've transferred yourself entirely. You don't have a moment, not a breath, or a faculty, nor a farthing that we may honestly reserve.
So you have to expect to be weary. Labor is part of the deal.
It is, but the wage is absolutely certain. It's a gracious reward, not a debt, but it's guaranteed when the term is done.
Okay, so we've laid out the whole doctrine. Appointment rules our time, our struggle, our labor. Now let's get to what I think is the most important part for you, the listener. Section 3. Drawing the necessary inferences.
The practical takeaways. What do we do with this information?
And the first one is a big one. It's what the source calls the devil's inference.
This is the logical trap, the voice that says, okay, if destiny is fixed, if God has already appointed the end, then why do anything? Why not just sit still? It's pure fatalism.
And the sermon's rebuttal is just fierce.
It is. It calls the logic absurd and deceitful, mainly because, people don't actually apply it to their real lives.
Right. You don't stand in front of a starving person and say, well, if you're predestined to eat, why bother lifting the fork?
Or, if I'm predestined to get rich, why should I even open my shop for business today? No one thinks that way.
So the belief in God's purposes should actually do the opposite. It should nerve us for work.
It should energize us.
Yeah.
And it connects directly to that amazing historical example, the iron sides of Cromwell.
They believed deeply in God's decrees, but they also famously kept their powder dry.
And that's the essential insight right there. It's not about passively trusting fate. It's understanding that God's purpose uses our actions. They believed in both everlasting purposes and human responsibility.
We are the means to the end.
You have to hold both those ideas in tension. The divine plan doesn't cancel out human effort, it empowers it.
Which brings us right back to Henry Olney's sudden death. This leads to the healthy man's inference.
Yes. Since death can come at an instant, the healthy person has no room to procrastinate on what's important.
It demands instant readiness. And the source gives some pretty clear, actionable steps.
Very clear. Have your will made and your account squared. And trim the ship or clear the decks for action. It's a call for order because you might get a sudden call to depart.
I love the anecdote they use about Mr. Whitfield, the evangelist.
It's so vivid. He said he could not sleep at night if I'd left my gloves out of their place.
Everything had to be in perfect order.
Not because he was obsessive, but because he was committed to being ready at a moment's notice.
And that principle is just timeless. I mean, if Whitfield needed his gloves in place, the modern version is getting your digital life in order.
Absolutely. Your
Right.
passwords, your documents, emergency contacts. Is everything squared away so the people who need it can find it?
Because that sudden end could come at noon, just like it did for Henry Olney. It forces you to live with a sense of urgency and preparation.
A powerful, non-negotiable mandate.
And what about for those who are already in the midst of it? The ones who are sick or mourning?
For the sick, the inference is about patience. You have to accept that your illness isn't just a random cruel event. It's a bitter draft prescribed as medicine for spiritual disease.
So you don't grow weary of waiting.
Right. You trust that when the affliction has done its work, relief will come. You trust the great physician's timing.
And for the mourner, someone grieving a loss as shocking as Henry Olney's.
The mourner's inference is maybe the hardest. Grieve, but do not rebel. You have to accept that the person was taken at the right time, that God gathered his fruit in its proper season.
The source calls it a true triumph of grace when you can. What was it? Grieve but not rebel, mourn without murmuring.
And sorrow without sinning. It's acknowledging divine timing, even when it feels brutal and wrong.
So we've really covered a profound journey today. We've moved from the terrifying chaos of a sudden death all the way to this deep, meticulous order of divine appointment.
Governing our time, our struggle, and our service. And the knowledge of that should lead to energy, courage, and just intense, instant preparation.
The big takeaway really is that this belief system is fundamentally active. It's not passive at all. It doesn't allow you to drift.
No, it demands purpose and readiness, because every single moment of your life is both appointed and meant to be used.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, we have to touch on the final, and I think the darkest implication from the source. It underscores why all this preparation is so necessary. It's the sinner's inference.
This is the ultimate consequence. If you spent your appointed time on earth waging warfare against God, serving the opposite master, then the end of your days looks fundamentally different.
We've been talking about the faithful getting a discharge from their warfare, a release from their labor.
But for the lost spirit, that whole concept of a limited appointed time, it just ceases to exist.
It's gone.
It's gone. The source warns that for the lost spirit, time is over when that angel swears that time shall be no more, and their condition is then settled forever.
So instead of a discharge from warfare,
They get an eternal warfare. Instead of release from service, they get dreadful slavery.
Oh.
And there is no appointed time, no end to the conflict or the bondage.
And that leaves us with the ultimate provocative thought for you to take with you. If your life is an appointed campaign and you are only immortal until your work is done, have you squared your account? Or are you living as if your term will never run out? Think about that essential question of readiness.